My name is Diane Calloway. I'm 67 years old, and last autumn, my daughter-in-law's mother posted a photo of my grandson's christening with the caption, "Just the people who matter most." I counted 19 faces at that table, my son, his wife, her whole family, and right in the middle, in a little white gown, the baby I had fed and bathed and rocked to sleep 4 days a week for almost a year. I was not in the photo. I had not been invited. I didn't cry. I'm a nurse. I've held men's hands while their hearts stopped. I don't fall apart over a brunch. I just left one comment. 11 words. 40 minutes later, my son was on my porch in the rain, begging me to take it down. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. Because the comment wasn't the story, the comment was just the match. What I want to tell you about is the woman who lit it, and the secret that was hiding underneath that perfect, blessed, family-only table, the one nobody saw coming, least of all me. Let me take you back. I've been a nurse for 36 years. Most of those years were in intensive care, and the last 12 were hospice, which is a different country altogether. People think calm is a soft thing, something gentle, something weak. It isn't. Calm is what's left when you've already survived the thing everyone else in the room is terrified of. I have stood at the foot of a bed and told a grown man his father wasn't going to wake up. I have learned the trick of keeping my voice level when the monitors are screaming, because the most frightened person in the room is the one everyone watches, and a nurse can't be that person. You learn to put your own fear in a drawer and deal with it later, alone at 2 in the morning when nobody needs you to be strong. I learned that for real in this house. In 2018, I nursed my husband through 11 months of pancreatic cancer in the front bedroom of this drafty old farmhouse on the coast of Maine. Ray Calloway. We bought this place 41 years ago. The wraparound porch, the lilac that's older than our marriage, the barn out back that somebody smarter than us had already turned into a little carriage house apartment. Ray died at 4:14 in the morning, and I know the exact minute because nurses always do. We carry the times the way other people carry birthdays. I held his hand and I didn't fall apart until everyone had gone home. And then I sat on the back steps and cried until the sun came up over the water. And then I made coffee and started the rest of my life. A few years after Ray was gone, my son Adam asked if he and his wife could move into the carriage house. "Just till we get on our feet, Mom," he said. Adam was 31 then. He's 35 now. So you can do the math on just till we get on our feet. I'm not telling you that to complain. I want to be clear about something before I tell you the ugly parts. Because if I don't, you'll think I'm the kind of woman who keeps score. And I'm not. I never wanted to keep score. The whole tragedy of this thing is that I would have given them everything I had and never written down a single number. And that, it turns out, was exactly the problem. So here is the number nobody wrote down. I paid the property taxes on the whole place. I paid every utility in that house. The carriage house was never separately metered, so the heat and the water and the electric, all of it ran through my account, my name, my retirement. When Sloan wanted to start her event styling business, weddings, parties, the kind of thing that lives and dies on Instagram, I co-signed the lease on her little studio downtown. And when she missed 2 payments that first winter, I covered them and never said a word. And the big one, the one nobody ever put a dollar sign on, because it was free, because it was just grandma, when my grandson Wyatt was born in the fall of 2024, I became the nanny. She went back to work when he was barely 6 weeks old, so from then on it was 4 days a week, 6 in the morning to 6 at night, so that Sloan could build her brand and Adam could keep his remote job. I warmed the bottles. I learned which cry meant hungry and which one meant scared. I knew that baby better than his own mother did, and I never once said that out loud, because it wasn't a competition, and I loved her too much to make it one. I should tell you who she is, my daughter-in-law, because if I make her a cartoon, then this story isn't worth your 70 minutes. Sloan Hartley grew up poor in a town an hour north of here that never let her forget it. Her mother, Cheryl, is the kind of woman who measures love in table settings and caption likes. Cheryl spent Sloane's entire childhood telling her the family was being judged. that they had to look like they belonged even when the lights were about to be shut off, that the worst thing in the world you could be was the family people felt sorry for. So when Sloan married my Adam, a soft-spoken man with a paid-off farmhouse waiting for him someday, she didn't feel lucky. I understand that now, though it cost me a great deal to learn it. She didn't feel lucky, she felt watched. She felt like the poor girl who'd married up, and she was certain that everyone could see the seams. I didn't understand any of that at the time. At the time, I just felt myself slowly going invisible. It happens the way a draft gets into an old house. You don't notice the first cold day. You notice the third winter when you realize you've been wearing a sweater indoors for months and you can't remember when you put it on. That's how it went with me. Adam's mom became the babysitter who lives in the big house. Thank you, Diane became, can you just grab Wyatt real quick? I cooked Sunday dinners, and her family came and ate them. And somewhere along the way, they stopped setting me a place at my own table. And I started eating standing up at the counter, telling myself I preferred it that way. And then, in the middle of all that quiet disappearing, one ordinary Tuesday in late summer, I saw the thing that woke me up. Sloan had left her phone on the kitchen island while she ran out to the car for the diaper bag. It lit up, a group chat, the Hartley family thread, dozens of them on it. I wasn't snooping. I was wiping the counter and it was just there, face up glowing. One message had scrolled into view from Sloan herself from weeks before in answer to something her sister had asked about money. Don't stress about the house, it said. It's basically ours already. Diane's just the lady who watches Wyatt, the lady who watches Wyatt. I want you to understand that I didn't gasp and I didn't slam anything and I didn't say a word when she came back in with the diaper bag and scooped up the baby and breezed out the door calling, "Bye, see you at 6." I just stood there with the dish rag in my hand and felt something settle in me, cold and clear, the way a diagnosis settles. Because I'd seen this before, not in my family, but in 100 hospital rooms. I'd seen what happens when one person quietly decides another person is already gone. I knew the look of it. And that afternoon, while Wyatt napped, I went to the desk in the front room and I started a folder, just a folder, tax statements, utility bills, the studio lease. I didn't have a plan yet. I just had a nurse's instinct that I was going to need my paperwork, the same way you keep a chart on a patient whose numbers are starting to slide. I want you to remember that folder. It's going to matter. 3 weeks later, on a Thursday, Sloan caught me on the stairs. She didn't stop walking. That was the thing about Sloan. She said the important things while in motion, so you never got to answer. "Oh, Diane," she said, already 2 steps below me, baby on her hip. "The luncheon after the christening is going to be super tight on numbers. It's basically just immediate family. You know how my mom is about the seating. You get it." And she was gone around the landing before I could even fix my face into the shape of a person who got it. I did get it, though. That was the terrible part. I got it completely. I had already bought a dress, a soft gray one with little pearl buttons, because you don't wear black to a baptism. I'd even practiced not crying, standing in front of the bathroom mirror, because I cry at christenings the way I never cry at funerals. There's something about a baby in white getting promised a whole life that takes the legs right out from under me. I'd practiced. I had it down. Sunday came. They'd put the christening off and off the way young couples do, so Wyatt was nearly a year old now, big and bright in his gown. I heard their car pull out of the driveway at 9, gravel popping, the muffler that Adam kept saying he'd fix. I made myself a cup of tea. I sat on the porch in the soft early autumn sun, and I told myself I was at peace, and I almost believed it. There's a particular quiet to a house when everyone has left it on purpose without you. It has a texture. I sat in it and drank my tea and listened to the wind and the gulls, and I thought, you've buried a husband, Diane. You can sit out a lunch. Then I made the mistake of opening Facebook. Cheryl had posted before the soup was even served. A long table at the Sail Loft, the nicest waterfront restaurant in the whole county, the one with the white tablecloths and the lobster that costs what a week of groceries costs, the one I had taken Adam to the night he graduated college, just the two of us, his father already too sick to come. 19 people. Champagne in tall glasses. My grandson being passed from lap to lap in his christening gown, his fat little fists that look babies get where they're trying to figure out why everyone's so loud and happy. And underneath it, in Cheryl's looping caption font, just the people who matter most. Our whole family, finally, all together. So bless, I sat very still. The tea went cold in my hands, and I didn't notice. I'm going to be honest with you now, because the version of me that pretends she felt nothing in that moment is a liar, and liars tell boring stories. I did not feel powerful. I did not feel like a strong woman about to set a magnificent boundary. For one long minute, I felt thrown away. I felt like a 67-year-old widow, sitting alone on a porch, looking at a photograph of a baby she loved more than her own breath, a baby being held by every single person in the world except her. I thought about Ray. I thought about every bottle I'd warmed at 3 in the morning so that girl could sleep through. I thought about the gray dress hanging in my closet with the pearl buttons and how stupid it had been to practice not crying. And I cried, not the practice kind, the real kind, the kind you can't aim. That minute matters. I need you to hold on to it because everything I did after came from the other side of it, from the place you get to once you've finished grieving and you can finally coldly see. When the minute was over, I went inside and I called Joan. Joan Albright has lived 2 houses down for 30 years, and she's the only person on this earth who's allowed to call me D. She's 68, a retired estate attorney, sharp as a tack and twice as mean when she needs to be in the best possible way. I told her about the photo. I told her about the message on the phone, the lady who watches Wyatt. There was a long pause, and then Joan said, in the flat voice she used to use on opposing counsel, D, get me the studio lease tonight. It's just a lease, Joan. Humor me, she said. I had a bad feeling about that thing the day you co-signed it. So I pulled the folder. And here's the first thing I didn't know. The studio lease I'd co-signed for Sloan wasn't just a lease anymore. Joan walked me through it over the phone, reading the fine print I'd never read. And somewhere in the last 2 years, Sloan had used a line of business credit that was attached through the guarantee I'd signed to me, to my name, to my house potentially. And it was behind, not catastrophically, not yet, but it was behind, and it was growing. And if it went all the way south, the people coming to collect would not be knocking on Sloane's door. They'd be knocking on mine. How much, I said. Joan told me. I sat down because that changed something. Up until that phone call, what I was feeling was hurt. And hurt is a thing you can sit on a porch and absorb. But this wasn't hurt anymore. This was exposure. My name, my retirement, the house Ray and I bled for, all of it quietly hanging off a hook I'd let someone fasten without ever telling me what they were hanging on it. Whatever I did next was not going to be revenge. I want you to be clear-eyed about that, because the comments are always full of people calling a woman like me bitter. It wasn't bitterness. It was a nurse seeing a number on a chart and finally deciding to intervene. I picked the tablet back up. The photo was still there. Just the people who matter most. I tapped the little heart so they'd know I'd seen it. And then underneath the caption, I typed 11 words. Then the people who matter most can pay their own bills. I read it twice. I hit post. I turned the tablet face down on the kitchen table, and I went and got the folder. I sat down to wait, the way I used to sit with families in the last hour, when there's nothing left to do but be present for what's coming. It took 40 minutes. I heard the car before I saw it, that muffler, and then headlights swung across the front window even though it wasn't dark yet, because it had started, of course, to rain. A car door slammed, footsteps on the porch, fast and heavy, and then Adam was pounding on the door he had a key to, because in his panic he'd forgotten he could just come in. I opened it. My son stood there in his christening suit, soaked through, his tie crooked, his face the color of skim milk. Mom, what the hell is that comment? Cheryl is mortified. The whole table saw it. Sloan is crying in the car right now. You got to take it down. Take it down, please, right now. I'm not taking it down, Adam, I said. It's true. He looked at me like I'd started speaking a language he didn't have. Mom, come on, you can't just. He pushed a wet hand through his wet hair. You're blowing up the whole day over a seating thing. Come inside, I said. You're soaked. I'll make you tea. And I did. Even then, Even with my name on a credit line and my heart in pieces, I put the kettle on because that's who I am and because 40 years of nursing teaches you that the kettle buys you the 30 seconds you need to say the hard thing right. He sat at the kitchen table dripping, and I set a cup in front of him, and then I put one sheet of paper down next to it. It wasn't a bill. He flinched like it might be. It was a calendar, my childcare calendar, the one with Wyatt's nap times penciled in my own handwriting. 4 days a week, 6 to 6, for the last 10 months. Starting Monday, I said, I'm not going to be watching Wyatt anymore. He actually laughed. The nervous kind, the bark that isn't a laugh at all. Mom, that's not funny. Sloane's got the bridal expo in 3 weeks. She needs those days. You know she needs those days. You can't just, I can, actually, I said. I kept my voice level, the foot of the bed voice. I'm not family, sweetheart. Your wife was very clear about that. And family doesn't ask a stranger to raise their kid for free. I watched it land. I watched my son's face go through the whole thing, the disbelief, then the indignation, and then slowly the math. I watched Adam Calloway do, for the very first time in his 35 years, the arithmetic that nobody in that family had ever once done. That's like, his voice dropped. That's $900 a week for real daycare. That's more around here, I said gently. I checked. And the good ones have a wait list that's longer than 3 weeks. So if I were you, I'd start calling first thing tomorrow. For Wyatt's sake. He stared into his tea. The rain ran down the dark windows. And my big, gentle, conflict-avoidant son, the boy who'd spent his whole adult life keeping the peace by handing other people the steering wheel, finally understood that the wheel had never been free. The next morning, the truck came. I'd scheduled it the week before. That's the part people always miss about me, the part Sloane never once factored in. I am always 3 steps ahead because I spent 36 years in rooms where being unprepared is how people die. A two-man crew from the utility company there to split the meters. The carriage house was finally going to get its own. Sloane came flying out the side door in her robe and slippers, hair still in last night's pins. What is this? What's going on? What are they doing? They're putting your meter in, I said, not looking up from the planter I was tidying. First of the month, you pay for the heat and the lights you use. It's how the rest of the country lives, Hans. We did not budget for this. Her voice cracked up into the register people hit when the floor is moving under them. You can't spring this on us. Who does that? You've lived rent-free for 4 years, Sloane, I said. The budget's been there the whole time. It's just had my name on it. And then I drove downtown, and I did the thing that cost the most and felt the least like anger. I walked into the property management office, and I handed over a signed letter Joan had drafted, removing myself as guarantor and cosigner fist on the studio lease, effective at renewal. The little white-walled room where my daughter-in-law photographed her tablescapes for the people who matter most. I unhooked my whole life from it, calmly, in under 15 minutes, and then I drove to the diner on the harbor, and I had a piece of blueberry pie and a second cup of coffee, and I watched the boats, and I felt the strangest thing. Not triumph, lightness, like setting down a bag you've carried so long you forgot it was even a weight. But here's what I want you to hold on to, because this is where the story turns and stops being the one you think it is. 3 days later, Joan called me back, and her voice had changed. Dee, she said, I did some digging on the studio, on the business credit. A pause. Honey, this girl isn't living large. I thought she was running up your name, buying fancy linens and being careless. She's not. She's drowning. What do you mean, drowning? I mean, the whole business is underwater. Has been for a year. She's been robbing one card to feed another, the classic spiral. The bridal expo in 3 weeks, die. That's not a flex. That's a Hail Mary. She put down a non-refundable deposit she couldn't afford because if she lands the contacts there, maybe she keeps the doors open. And if she doesn't, Joan let it hang. I sat with that. I sat with it the way you sit with a scan you didn't want to see. Because suddenly the 4 days a week wasn't a young woman building a glamorous brand on her mother-in-law's free labor. It was a young woman bailing water out of a sinking boat with a teacup, hiding the leak from her husband, hiding it from her mother, God, especially from her mother, the one who taught her, that being the family people feel sorry for was the only unforgivable sin. Her coldness toward me wasn't cruelty for sport. It was a person in a full panic, treating the one person who was helping her the worst, because that's what drowning people do. They climb on top of whoever's closest, even the one holding them up. I knew that. I had watched it in hospital corridors 1,000 times. I just had never once thought to look for it at my own kitchen table. That night, I couldn't sleep. I want to tell you about something I'm not proud of and not ashamed of either, because it's the truest thing in this whole story. On my nightstand in the back was the receiver to a baby monitor, the second half of the set, the one I'd kept so that on the nights Wyatt slept over, I could hear him from my room. I hadn't given it back. I'd told myself it was practical. The truth is, I just couldn't make myself unplug it. At 1 in the morning, lying there with all of it churning, I reached over and turned it on. Out of habit. Out of something worse than habit. And there he was, faint through the wall and across the yard, Wyatt fussing, then a little hiccup, then settling, and then that long, surrendering sigh that babies make when they finally give up the fight and let sleep take them. The most peaceful sound in the world. And I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark and I cried, finally, the way I hadn't let myself cry over the photograph. Because I had won every single round so far, the meter, the lease, the calendar, all of it. I had been right at every turn. And being right, it turns out, is not the same as being happy. I had never in my life felt more like a grandmother and less like one at the very same time. There was a baby 50 feet away who had my whole heart, and I was by my own hand, no longer allowed to go to him in the night. In the morning, I turned the monitor off and I wrapped the cord around it and I put it in the bottom drawer of the dresser and shut it. Some doors you have to close even when it's your own hand shaking on the knob. I made my coffee. I went on. A week into all this, Adam came by himself. He knocked, which got me, because he never knocked. I let him in and he stood in the kitchen with his hands jammed in his pockets. And he wouldn't sit and he wouldn't look at me. And finally he said, I got to ask you something, and I need you to be straight with me. He swallowed. How long have you been paying for everything? And there it was. The thing I'd assumed all this time he knew. Adam, I said slowly, what do you mean how long? You've always known. No. His voice was strange. No, Mom, Sloan handled the house stuff. She always said you insisted. She said you'd get hurt if we tried to chip in, that it made you feel useful, that you loved doing it, and we should just let you have it. He laughed, that awful bark again. And she told me you said the same thing about Wyatt, that you begged to keep him those 4 days. That if we put him in daycare, it'd break your heart. I had to put my hand on the counter. Because do you see it? Do you see what she'd done? Not out of malice, I truly believe that now, but out of panic and pride and a lifetime of being taught that needing help is shameful. She had stood directly in the middle, between my son and me, for 4 years. She'd told Adam that his mother insisted on giving, so he never had to feel like a man who couldn't provide. And she told me that Adam was too proud to accept, so I'd keep giving and never embarrass him by offering out loud. She'd been managing both of us, translating each of us to the other, in whatever language kept the boat afloat 1 more month. And the result was that my own son had watched me turn into the help and never understood that's what was happening. Because the truth had been edited out of the air between us before it ever reached him. I let it happen, he said, and now he did look at me, and his eyes were wet. I'm 35 and I let my mom become the babysitter and the landlord and I don't even have a word for it. I just wanted the house quiet. I wanted Sloan to be okay. And I told myself you were happy. God, I'm such a coward. You're not a coward, I said. And I meant it. You were lied to. There's a difference. But Adam, I made him meet my eyes. You're done being lied to, both of you, as of right now. The next part is the one everyone gets wrong before I tell it. So let me say it plainly. I never threw them out. I am not in the business of putting my grandson on the street. I want you to feel the difference in your chest, because the difference is the entire point of my life. I had Joan draw up a lease, a real one. Clean, fair, market rate for the carriage house. First month, last month's security deposit, the exact same lease a stranger would sign. Not punishment. The opposite of punishment. An adult arrangement between adults, the kind we should have had 4 years ago, the kind that would have protected all three of us from exactly the mess we were in. I brought it up myself on a Tuesday evening and knocked on their door like a visitor. Adam read it at the kitchen table, slow, his jaw working. Sloane stood by the window with her arms crossed so tight her knuckles were white. "You're charging us rent," she said, not turning around. "This house is going to be Adam's someday anyway. You know that. So what's the point? You're just trying to make us feel like garbage." I kept my voice as level as a heart monitor that's holding steady. "Maybe it will be his someday," I said. "But I'm not dead yet, Sloane, and I am done living like a ghost in a house I'm still paying for." She spun around then, and her face was red and shaking, and she said the thing that people say when they've run out of real moves. "You know what? Forget it. We'll move out before I pay rent to my own mother-in-law. I'd rather live in a shoebox in town than hand you a check every month like some tenant." She threw the word at me like it was filthy. She said it loud, too, loud enough that I understood it was a performance, that she didn't mean it, that it was a chess move designed to make me fold, because surely the lonely old widow's worst fear was an empty house. She had me wrong on every count. I'd felt more alone with them living 40 feet away and looking through me than I'd felt in 8 years of widowhood. An empty house didn't scare me. An empty house had a porch and the ocean and a phone I knew how to use. So the next morning, I drove to the hardware store and I bought 10 flat moving boxes. I taped them into shape in my own kitchen, neat as you please, and I carried them across the yard and stacked them in the shared entryway outside their door. Then I knocked. Sloane opened it. Her eyes were swollen. She'd clearly been up half the night. She looked at the tower of boxes and then at me, and her whole face just stopped. "What is this?" she said. "Adam mentioned the lease didn't work for you," I said, calm as Sunday. "I didn't want the move to be hard on you, what with the baby and all. There's tape in the top box. Just holler if you run short." She stared at me like I'd reached out and turned the color of the whole world a few degrees colder. Because her threat had been a bluff, and I had just walked right off her chessboard and into the kitchen to make myself lunch. I figured that would be the end of the noise. Figured we'd have a tense few weeks, and a quiet move, and that would be that. That night around 10, there was a small knock. I opened the door and it was Sloane. Alone. No robe and armor. No Instagram posture. Just a young woman who'd been crying for a week, standing on my step in the porch light with her arms hanging at her sides like she didn't know what to do with them. "Can I come in?" she said. It wasn't really a question. It was a white flag. I made tea. Of course I made tea. We sat at the table where I'd put the calendar down a couple weeks before, and for a while she didn't say anything, just turned the mug around and around in her hands. And then it all came out, the whole flood. The business, the debt, the cards, the deposit she couldn't afford, the lie she'd been telling Adam, the lie she'd been telling her mother, the lie she'd been telling herself. "I cut you out of the photo," she said finally, and her voice broke clean in half. "Because if you were in it, my mom would have spent the whole lunch reminding everyone, in that sweet voice she does, that we live in your house, on your money, that I married up and I can't take care of my own family." She'd have done it with a smile and a hand on my arm, and everybody at that table would have known exactly what she meant. She wiped her face with the back of her hand, this raw, childish gesture. "I've been the girl people feel sorry for my whole life, Diane. I just didn't want to be her at my own son's christening. So I made you disappear instead. And then I told myself it was about the seating chart, because that was easier than knowing what I'd actually done. It was the first time in 4 years I'd ever seen the real Sloane. Not the styled one, the scared one. The one who'd been 7 years old once, in a house where the lights were getting shut off, learning that love was a thing you performed, so the neighbors wouldn't pity you. I didn't forgive her on the spot. I want to be honest about that, because cheap forgiveness is just another way of making yourself disappear, and I was done disappearing. But I told her the truth, which is the only thing I had left that was worth giving. "I never once thought less of you for being poor," I said. "Not for 1 second. You want to know the moment I lost respect for you? It wasn't anything to do with money. It was a Tuesday this past winter. You handed me Wyatt on your way out the door, and you didn't look at me, not at my face, not at my eyes. You handed me the most precious thing in your life, the way you'd hand your coat to a coat rack. That's the moment, Sloan. You didn't have to seat me at your table. You just had to see me when I was standing right in front of you, holding your son. She put her face in her hands and cried, and I let her, and I didn't reach across the table, and I didn't take it back, and I didn't make it easier, because some things you have to just let a person feel all the way to the bottom of. They moved out 3 weeks later, not onto the street, into a decent little 2-bedroom in town, with their own meter and their own grocery list, and a daycare bill that made Sloan go gray for a second every time it auto-drafted. She still couldn't bring herself to pay rent to me, and you know what? I let her have that, because I came to understand that paying somebody else, a real landlord, a real stranger, was the thing that finally let her feel like an adult instead of a charity case. It was the one piece of pride she had left, and it didn't cost me anything to let her keep it, so I did. That's a kind of mercy you only learn at the end of a long life, knowing which of someone's small dignities to leave standing. Adam came back alone the afternoon they finished loading the U-Haul. He stood in my kitchen and he hugged me, really hugged me the way he used to when he was a little boy, and the thunder scared him, the way he hadn't since before his father got sick. And he said into my shoulder, "I let you become the help, Mom. I watched it happen for 4 years and I let it. I'm so sorry." And that right there was worth more than the meter and the lease and the boxes and the 11 words all put together. That was the whole point I'd been trying to make, without knowing I was trying to make it. So that's where I thought the story ended. A boundary, a reckoning, a son who finally saw me, a daughter-in-law learning to swim on her own. The kind of clean ending you'd nod at and click off and go on with your evening. But I told you at the start there was a secret under that perfect family-only table. And I haven't told you yet what it was, because I didn't know it yet either. Here's the part that brought me to my knees. 2 weeks after they moved out, my phone rang at 6:40 in the morning. It was Sloan, and she was crying so hard I could barely make out the words. "It's my mom," she said. "It's Cheryl." She collapsed. Diane, they took her to Maine Medical, and the doctors are saying, they're using words I don't understand, and nobody's just standing to know what to do, and Gary's standing and all my sisters are losing it, and I didn't know who else to. "Tell me the words," I said. The foot of the bed voice, the voice that doesn't move. "Tell me exactly what the doctor said, as close as you can remember," she told me. And I closed my eyes, standing there in my kitchen in my robe, because I'd spent 12 years in hospice and I knew those words the way you know your own children's voices. They weren't concepts. They weren't, "We'll run some tests." They were the words doctors use when the tests are already done and have been for a while. "Sloan," I said carefully, "did your mother know before this morning? Had she already been told something?" There was a silence on the line so long I thought the call had dropped. And then Sloan said, in a tiny voice, the voice of the 7-year-old in the house with the shut-off lights, there were appointments on her calendar. I saw them and I didn't ask. She said they were nothing. She said, "Oh my God, the christening." She kept saying she wanted it perfect. She wanted everybody there. She wanted the whole family in one photo. She got so worked up about the photo, and I thought she was just being mom about it. And the whole thing turned over in front of me, slow and terrible, like a key finally finding the lock. Cheryl had known. Cheryl had been told weeks before that she was dying, and she had thrown that christening, the perfect table, the champagne, the lobster, the 19 faces, our whole family finally all together, so blessed, not out of vanity, out of desperation. It was the last perfect photograph she would ever get to take. The final, flawless tableau of the life she'd spent 61 years performing so that no one would ever know how scared and how poor and how breakable she had always been underneath it. And why had she cut me out of it? Why, of all the people, edit out the grandmother who watched the baby? Because I am a hospice nurse. Because I have spent my whole life in rooms with the dying, and Cheryl Hartley knew it. I was the one person at that table who would have looked at her across the lobster and the champagne and seen it, seen the weight she'd lost, the gray under the powder, the careful way she sat to hide the pain, the particular brightness that very sick people put on like a coat. I would have known. And if I knew, the spell would break. The perfect photo would become a deathbed in a party dress. So she made the one person who could see the truth disappear, so that for one more afternoon the lie could hold, so that her family could be happy and blessed and whole in a photograph for just a little while longer before everything came down. The cruelty had a root, and the root was the most human, most heartbreaking thing in the world. She didn't cut me out because she didn't matter. She cut me out because I was the only one who'd see her dying, and she couldn't bear on that one perfect day to be seen. I had a choice to make, standing there in my kitchen with my coffee going cold for the second time in this story. The woman who had erased me, who had taught my daughter-in-law to be ashamed of needing me, who had orchestrated the single most painful afternoon of my widowhood. That woman was lying in a hospital bed across the bay, dying, surrounded by people who loved her and had no idea how to help her go. And the one person in 3 counties who knew exactly how to help her was the lady she'd cut out of the photo. I want to tell you, I didn't hesitate. I'd be lying. I sat down at the table and I put my head in my hands, and for about 90 seconds, I let myself feel every bit of it, the injustices of it, the small, mean voice that said, let her family figure it out. You don't owe these people anything. 90 seconds. I'm not a saint. I'm a nurse, which is a different and more useful thing. Then I got up and I got dressed and I drove to the hospital. They let me in because Sloan told them to. I walked down a corridor I knew the smell of better than my own front hall, and I came to the room, and there in the bed was Cheryl Hartley. Without the powder, without the caption font, without the perfect table, just a frightened woman the size of a girl, and I could read her chart from the doorway with my eyes. I didn't even need the file. Her family was scattered around the room, like people in a shipwreck, useless with love, and they all turned to look at me, and I saw this moment Cheryl recognized who'd walked in. Her eyes filled. She knew exactly what my being there meant. A hospice nurse doesn't come to your room to tell you you're getting better. I cut you out of the picture, she whispered. Her first words to me, not hello. That. I know you did, I said. I came to the side of the bed and I took her hand the way I've taken 1,000 hands, and I checked her color and her breathing and the IV line all in one practice sweep without ever letting go. Because that's the job. You comfort and you assess at the same time. Your hand's doing 2 kinds of work at once. Cheryl, look at me. I know why you did it too. You weren't supposed to be there, she said, and a tear went sideways into her pillow. You're the only one who looks. Everybody else just sees the table. You look at the person. I built a perfect table my whole life so nobody would see I was, so nobody would see me. And you'd have seen me. You'd have seen this. She gestured weakly at her own dying body. I couldn't have that, not that day. I just wanted one perfect day before they all know me as the sick one, the dying one, the thing people feel sorry for. And there it was, the exact same sentence Sloan had cried at my kitchen table. The thing people feel sorry for, passed down from mother to daughter like an heirloom, like a curse, like a recipe. The terror of being pitied so strong that it had been worth cutting a grandmother out of a christening, worth making a young woman drown in secret debt, worth a whole life spent setting beautiful tables so nobody would ever look underneath. I held her hand. I leaned in close so only she could hear me. I see everyone, Cheryl, I said. That's the job. That's the whole job. I've been doing it for 36 years. I see the person at the table, not the table. That's exactly why you cut me out. I squeezed her hand, and it's exactly why I'm the one standing here now. Because everybody else in this room loves you and doesn't know how to look at this. I love nobody in this room, if we're being honest, and I know how to look at it. So you got it backwards, all of you, your whole family. The person you push away because she sees too clearly is the person you're going to need when the seeing matters most. Her family was crying. Sloan was crying. Gary, her quiet husband, stood at the foot of the bed with his hat in his hands like it was already a funeral. Will you stay? 3 words. A whole surrender. The woman who measured love in table settings, asking the woman she'd erased to stay. I'll stay, I said. I'll show your kids what to do. I'll show you too. There's a way to do this that isn't all fear, Cheryl. I promise you there's a way. And I stayed. I won't drag you through the next 5 weeks because they belong to her family and not to a video. But I'll tell you the shape of them. I showed Sloane and her sisters how to wet a dying mother's lips, how to turn her so she didn't ache, how to read the breathing, how to not be afraid of the long pauses. I showed them that you can laugh in that room, that you're allowed to, that it isn't a betrayal. I sat with Cheryl in the small hours when everyone else finally slept, and we talked, really talked. Two old women, two mothers, both of us experts in pretending to be fine. And somewhere in those nights, the thing between us that had started as a knife turned into something I can only call a friendship, the fastest and strangest and truest friendship of my life, because there's no time to waste on pretending when one of you is leaving. She asked me once, near the end, why I'd come. After everything, I'd have understood if you let me rot, she said, trying to make a joke of it, the old Cheryl flickering up for a second. Because boundaries aren't revenge, I told her. I spent a month teaching that to your daughter without ever saying it out loud. I drew a hard line with all of you, the meter, the lease, the boxes, all of it, not so I could win, so that I'd stop disappearing, so that one day there'd be enough of me left to give something real back. You can't give from an empty well, Cheryl. The line I drew is the only reason I had anything left to bring to this room. I smoothed her hair off her forehead. I didn't come here in spite of the boundary. I came here because of it. She died just before dawn in December, with her whole family around her and not one of them afraid, because I'd taken the fear out of the room weeks before and replaced it with the only thing that ever fills that particular hole, which is presence. 4:51 in the morning. I know the exact minute. I always do. So now let me tell you where we all are, here in the middle of June, with the lilac finally done blooming. I see Wyatt more now than I ever did when I was the unpaid help, not less. Twice a week, on my terms, afternoons on the porch in the good light, no schedule but ours, no 6 o'clock deadline, just a grandmother and a grandson, and a whole golden hour belonging to nobody else. Sloane drops him off, and she looks me in the eye when she does it. Every time. She learned that in her mother's hospital room, watching me look at people. Last week she stayed and had iced tea on the steps, and we sat in a quiet that didn't have a single sharp edge in it. We're not close, she and I. I don't know that we ever will be. But we're real now, and real is so much better than close and fake that I wouldn't trade it back for anything. Adam fixed the muffler. Small thing. Felt like a big one. The carriage house has tenants now. Hank and Pearl Sutton, a retired music teacher, and her husband, two of the kindest people I've ever met, who pay their rent on time and bring me tomatoes from their little container garden and never once make me feel like furniture. The rent goes into an account I labeled, the day I opened it, Florence. And I'll tell you a secret, I already went, this past spring, while the grief was still raw enough that I needed an ocean between me and this house. I closed the place up, and I spent 12 days walking that golden city by myself, 67 years old, eating gelato for dinner like a teenager, crying in front of paintings, the happiest I had been since before Ray got sick. I sent Wyatt a postcard he can't read yet. Sloane has it on their fridge. I think sometimes about that minute on the porch, the cold tea, the photograph, the floor tilting under me, the minute I felt thrown away. I'm glad I felt it. I am. Because everything good in my life right now came from what I did on the other side of it. From the moment I stopped grieving the seat I wasn't given and started seeing clearly what I actually had. I stopped making myself small enough to fit in the little spaces other people left for me. And when I did that, when I finally took up my whole size again, it turned out there was so much more of me than anyone had let me be. Enough to draw a line, enough to mean it, and enough, when the moment came, to walk into the room of the woman who erased me and hold her hand while she died. I'm not the lady who watches the baby anymore. It's my house, it's my name on the deed and nobody else's. And I'm the one telling the story now.
Hey, before you go, I need to say something happening because I've read Diane's story probably 6 times now, and it gets me every single time. When I first read it, I thought it was about a woman getting even. It isn't. The bravest thing she did wasn't the 11 words, or the boxes, or the rent. It was getting in her car and driving to the bedside of the woman who erased her a day and choosing to be a nurse instead of a judge. That's the part that wrecks me. Boundaries aren't revenge, folks. Boundaries are how you stop disappearing so that one day ahavs and you've actually got something left in the tank to give back, to you, even to the people who didn't earn it. If you've ever been the one who matters least in your own family, tell me about it down in the comments. I read every single one, I promise. And here's my real question. Would Diane's choice at the end have been harder for you than the boundary was? Be honest. If it would have, you might be more honest than most. I'll see you in the next one.